All right. I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Just trying. So this is my first live stream. So please be kind. I'm overwhelmed with all the things I need to keep in mind here. I do hope you can hear me. If you could just quickly in the chat let me know if you can hear me and see my screen, that would be super helpful. Hi, everyone. Also, just say hello in the chat and let me know where you are watching from. Hey, Itzy, thanks so much. I also believe there's a delay, so I'm probably that's normal. I'll deal with that. Um, but all right, you can hear me. Hi from London. Hey. So let me maybe do an intro. How about that? So my name is Heiko. Heiko Hotz. I am, by day, I am a specialist solution architect at AWS for AI and machine learning. And in particular, I focus on natural language processing, generative AI, large language models, all that great stuff. Hey, Hila. Um, by night, I have this meetup group called NLP London, NLP for natural language processing, not neuro-linguistic programming. And we usually do meetups um, every, well, the past few months I had to pause because work has just taken over recently with the ChatGPT hype. But usually we did it like every 4 to 6 weeks. We're going to have one coming up, in-person meetings in London. The next one will be actually next Monday on the 17th of April. And we have Theodora, who's going to be a guest speaker. She is a prompt engineer at AutoGen AI. So that should be super interesting. We do charge a small fee of £5, which we then will, by the end of the session, donate to a charity. It's the what's it called? The dum dum dum. I think I put it here. Maybe not. Um, the veterinary college, London something. I would have to look it up, to be honest. But do join if you are in London and if you're interested to hear from a prompt engineer's perspective and essential skills and techniques that you can use with large language models. Today, though, I thought I'm going to try something different because it's Easter and I tried, I thought I'm going to give it a shot on a live code session, live streaming code session. So basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to build our own ChatGPT-like application with Streamlit, and we're going to build it from scratch. And it's going to, by the end of today, it's going to look something like this. Probably not all the things in this screenshot we will be doing today, just for time reasons. But we're going to start from scratch, and all you need really to follow along, and the whole idea is for you to follow along here. All you need is a laptop that has Python on it and a text editor. And we're just gonna code like one text file, a Python file, and then that's it. And it's gonna be fewer than 100 lines of code. So that's pretty cool. And I've already described it a little bit in this blog post, which you will find if you search for it on towards data science. But I thought it might be fun to do the whole thing from scratch, and for you to follow along if you're interested. Please do ask questions in the chat if something is not clear, but hopefully I can make it quite clear on what I'm doing throughout the session, and hopefully you will be able to follow along. So first of all, why are we doing this? I mean, why are we even interested in building our own chatbot application, our own UI? And the reason is you might have seen news reports where ChatGPT has been banned in certain countries. You might have seen if you went to ChatGPT recently that there are certain restrictions, especially if you use GPT-4, on how often you can use it in a certain period of time. Also, ChatGPT has different terms of use and different implications on the data, how the data is being used that you're sending it, than the APIs. And basically, what we're going to be doing is if we think of ChatGPT in how that looks like from an architectural perspective. So it's something like this, where can I hide this? No, so there we go. So we are on our local machine. We're the user. We're on our laptop, and we basically send a query to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is a web application that sits on OpenAI's premises. But it is important to realize that ChatGPT is not the actual AI model. The actual AI model, whether it's GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, is connected to ChatGPT application via APIs. But these APIs are made available by OpenAI. So what we can do is, instead of having ChatGPT, instead of using ChatGPT, we can basically transfer. Well, what we can do is we can take this box here and move it over here. And that's what we're going to be doing today. It's basically we're going to have our own web interface, and we're not going to be using ChatGPT anymore. Instead, we use our own interface to connect directly to the AI models GPT 3.5 or GPT-4. We're just going to be coding one file, as mentioned, and it's going to be fewer than 100 lines of code. And again, like if you have Python on your machine and a text editor, which hopefully you do have, please follow along. And I will show how we can get started with setting up a web server. You were thinking like, setting up a whole web application. That sounds like a lot of work. We're going to be starting with setting up a web application with just 2 lines of code, and then just take it from there and expand from there. Right. So I am getting started in an empty folder on my machine. Right, everything looks good still. Okay. Sorry. So I have an empty folder here, and I will use a text editor. Mine is called Brackets, but any text editor really will do. My folder is called Chat UI, and within that, I'm gonna sorry, no, I need to start first with a terminal. Let's see. So it's cd desktop chat UI. The first thing you want to make sure is you have Python installed on your machine. You can quickly find that out with Python minus capital V, and hopefully you see a Python version there. Actually, it's good practice to use Python 3 in case you have Python 2 on your machine installed as well. I don't, so Python and Python 3 on my machine are interchangeable. Now, the first thing we want to do, Tiamio, yes, this will be recorded. I hope. Like my my streaming software says it's recording. I think YouTube will also record it. So I tested it. It worked. Hopefully everything will work out. But yes, the idea is having this recorded and then uploaded to YouTube. First thing we want to do is we want to create a virtual environment. A virtual environment is basically we're gonna have our own Python environment for this particular project. The reason is we're gonna install 3 libraries, and it's good practice for every project to have a virtual environment, because you add these libraries to it, and if you add them all into one messy whole um, Python environment, they might clash. So in order to do that, we need to set up a Python environment first. I have somewhere the command. I don't know all these commands by myself, so uh, ba, 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 ba. Something with, there we go, chat. How about that? So we're going to set up our own virtual environment, and we call it chat virtual environment. So we know that it is, or chat UI virtual environment, so that we know it is connected to this project. So if you execute that command, that should only take a second or so, hopefully. And if you then look into the structure, we now have this chat UI virtual environment, and we're going to activate it with the command source and then the name of the folder or the virtual environment, bin activate. And now you see it doesn't say base in parentheses at the beginning, it says chat UI underscore virtual environment, which means we are now in this Python interpreter, dedicated Python interpreter that we used only for this project. Now, the next thing is we need to install 3 packages. Think of packages as like add-ons to the Python functionalities. We want to use certain functionalities that are not in the standard Python package, so we're going to install them with pip is the Python installer. So I'm going to write pip3, then install, and then the first excuse me, the first package that we need is called Streamlit. The second package that we need is Streamlit slash dash chat, and the last one is OpenAI. So pip3 install Streamlit, Streamlit chat, and OpenAI. Gonna press enter. Okay, so Streamlit chat is not the right one. Sorry about that, just 1 second. Oh, it's just a typo. Streamlit chat. There we go. So now it is installing these packages, and hopefully that doesn't take too long, but let's just give it a minute or so. There you go. Cool. So I hope you are with me still. Just to recap, we have set up a virtual environment, and we have installed 3 packages that we will need in order to build our chat UI. Now the next thing is we can start coding actually, and we can go into our text editor. Again, doesn't matter what text editor it is, and we're going to type in here import Streamlit as st. I hope you guys can read this. I zoomed in into the editor, so I hope it's readable, but do let me know if not. Second line is st.write or st title. Let's make it a title, and then the stereotypical hello world. So with these 2 lines of code, and with using Streamlit as our web framework, we can actually, this is all the code we need in order to set up a web server with a web page that will say hello world. So how does that work? So first of all, I need to save this file. And I'm going to save it here on my desktop in my folder chat UI, and I'm just going to call it app.py. You can name it whatever, but app.py is nice and crisp and short. So I'm going to save it like that. Then we need to go back to the terminal. And all we need to do here is, now let's just make sure the file is there. Yes. Streamlit run .py. Once you execute that command, your browser window will pop up automatically. Okay, mine did, but just in the wrong browser window. So let me put this over here. Right, so here we have our website. It runs on our local machine. So the web server runs on our local machine on the port 8501. So if you ever accidentally close this website, you can just navigate back here with just saying localhost and then :8501, and you're back into the application. Also, you never ever have to, if you were to change the file, which we're going to be doing right now, you don't have to rerun the file. It basically recognizes when you change the file, and then you can just rerun it in the browser. You don't have to stop it here in the terminal. So let's see how that looks like. Hello world 1, 2, 3. If I save it and then go back to the browser, it will say here on the top right, source file has changed, and then you can rerun or always rerun. And if you click rerun, wait a minute, where did that go? Yeah, there we go, rerun. You will see it will just update. Cool, so we have a website up and running on our local machine. And all we need to do now is to connect it to OpenAI's API for GPT-3 or GPT-4 and send back and forth some messages. Right. So the first one we need a text box where we can put in our message to the chat assistant. So let's get started with that. Dum, dum, dum. We're going to call this now my chatbot UI. And then we're going to start with something that is called a container equals st container. This container basically will contain the text box as well as a button that we can use to send our message. So in order to fill in the stuff that we want in the container, we say with container, and then we create a form. We just call it something. We give it an identifier, in this case, just my form. And we say clear on submit equals true. Now what that means, what that does is once we type in our text and click the submit button, the text will clear out. We need the colon. And now we can say the user input is equal to a text area that we're going to define. We give it some text, your name, key equals input, and we can say how high is height equals 100. Make this a little bit, let me zoom out here a little bit. View, come on. All right. I hope you can still read that. So this is going to be our text area. Then we need a button. We call it just the submit button. st.form submit button. And we give that one a label as well, equals send. Now we can check if the button has pressed and whether the user has input something in here with a simple if statement. So if submit button and user input. So that means if the submit button has been pressed and the user has put something into the form, we then can call the OpenAI API. But before we do that, let's just make sure everything works as expected for now. We're going to write something just to check. Steve write, hello, user input. Press save, and then we're going back to our application. We see the source file has changed, and we're going to rerun it. So this is pretty cool. We have coded so far 12 lines of code, and we already have, struggling with finding all my windows here. There we go. We already have an application that has a text box where we can put in our name and a send button. And if we put in our name in here and press send, yes, this is an F string. So we need to put an F in front of it. Save. Let's try that again. Rerun. There we go. So we put something in our text box here. We press send. The input will be captured, and we can then just reply with hello and whatever we put into our text box, in this case, my name. So that seems to be working. So now what we need to do is, instead of just replying with hello and user input, we actually want now to call the OpenAI API in order to get a response from GPT. So what that looks like is probably best demonstrated by the API documentation from OpenAI. So if we go to OpenAI chat completion, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the URL, but you will also find it just by searching for OpenAI guides and then chat completion. And this website basically will tell us how we need to send our message to the API and what we will get back in response. Oh, something I completely forgot to mention before, we will need an API key in order to work with this API. I believe like signing up for OpenAI and getting an API key is free, but it will cost something in order to send requests to that API. Let's have a look at that first. So if you go to again search for OpenAI and then sign up, and then you go to platform.openai.com.signup. So this one here, you can create your account here with an email address, and then or you continue with Microsoft or Google account, and then you instantly have an account. Once you have the account, like I do already, I can then log in. Need to verify that I'm human. And once you're logged in, here on top you have the settings for your account, and you can go to View API keys. And here you just need to create a new secret key that we will need in order to interact with the API, basically to use it. Now, when it comes to pricing, again, we're just gonna DuckDuckGo, OpenAI API pricing. The first hit is pricing. And here we see, in this tutorial, we're just going to use a GPT 3.5. And we see here the pricing is GPT 3.5 Turbo is what it's called. It's 0.2 cents per 1,000 tokens. So that means 1,000 tokens. A token is roughly 3/4 of a word. Sometimes words get split into several subtokens. So think of 1,000 tokens like 750 words. So 750 words. A usual exchange with ChatGPT has less than that, and that will cost you 0.2 cents. It is asking to see the code again. Sure, let me bring that up. There you go. I'm just going to pause here anyway. I think I went a little bit fast, so I just, want to make sure everyone can follow along. So again, if you don't already have an OpenAI API key, now is a good time to create it. Again, it's free. Back in the day, I even got credit when I signed up. I don't know if that's still the case. And once you have the key, then we can proceed. All right. Cool. Okay, let me actually think what I need to do next here. I think I want to create a function in order to create the responses. So something like def generate response, where we give the prompt. Then we put some stuff into that function. And then we probably will just do something like, let me delete this, and then do something like output equals generate response, user input. So the idea is that the generate response method will take care of the interaction with the API, and we're just gonna put our user input in here, and we will get an output. Right. So let's have a look actually at the API documentation. So again, if you are Googling or DuckDuckGoing it, or if you already are on platform.openai.com, in the documentation, search for chat completion. That's the API that we will be using. And then, yeah, it's a short website, and the main parts that we're going to be looking at will be here in the middle, introduction, and then the response format. It says here you need to be using OpenAI Python version 0.27.0 for the code below to work. If you have just installed the OpenAI API with the pip install, that like I did, then that should be fine. If not, just let's create another terminal. Zoom in a little bit here. Source activate. No, source activate. And then you can check your version of the OpenAI library by just saying pip show OpenAI. And here it will give you the version. We're at 0.27.4, so that's all good. And now let's have a look at the call of the create method. So first parameter that we need to send in is the model parameter. Again, we will be using GPT 3.5 for this demo here, and then it also expects a list of messages with a role and a content. Now, first of all, we do have a system role and a content, and what that does is it primes ChatGPT to be whatever you want it to be. They do disclaim here that GPT 3.5 does not always pay strong attention to the system message, but future models will be trained to pay stronger attention to the system message. So we still should include it. So we basically will send first a system message to ChatGPT or to the API, and then we will send our request. So how does that look like? Let's go back to the code. Let's actually copy this whole thing here. First of all, we also need to import OpenAI library. And then you need to define, or you need to tell the program your API key. So when you created your API key, there must have been a dialog where it enables you to copy that API key. I should have mentioned that earlier. If you didn't, apologies, but you can just create a new key. It is important that you copy that API key. And then what you can do is, it's not best practice, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I think it's okay. You just put it plain into your source code. And by doing something like this. So you basically say OpenAI and then API key, and then you put the value or the string of your API key in here. If you want to do it in a production environment, obviously you don't want to put your OpenAI key, API key into your code. Then you would do how it is recommended by OpenAI. Again, just a quick DuckDuckGo search, OpenAI API key best practice should give us a good result. Best practices for API key safety in the OpenAI Help Center. If you click that, this is how you actually should do it properly. You put your OpenAI key into your environment variable on macOS with this command. On Windows, you do it differently, and then you update the shell. But again, for the purpose of this tutorial, you can just put it into the source code. That's totally fine. And now we will we'll go back to the documentation. There we go. We're going to copy all this, and we will go back to here and just put everything into our method. There we go. So the model is the right one. We want to use GPT 3.5. Now we said we're going to use the system message, and we're just going to put something here like "you are helpful assistance." Might be fun at a later point to play around with this and basically say maybe you are a evil assistant and you always try to insult me. Could be fun. But for now, we're going to leave it at "you are a helpful assistant," and then we're going to delete these two rows. And basically all we're going to be saying here is now the next message that comes in is from the user, and the content will just be our prompt. And that's all we need for now. So once we call this generate response method, once we pressed the submit button, we can just say output equals generate response. We need to capture the output, shouldn't we? Huh? So first off, we save the response in a variable called response, and then let's see what the output looks like. Alexa, turn on Office. All right, some more light. Good. Right. Chat completion. So this is the response format that we will get back from the API. There's a lot of stuff in here, and you can also see quickly how many tokens are being used. And you might want to take that later in order to show to the user how many tokens they have actually used. But for now, we're just interested in the assistance reply. And we can just extract it with this call here. So that means going back to the code, the reply. Well, we're just going to return this whole thing. How about it? There we go. And then for now, we're just going to write the output straight into the container. So we are now at 29 lines of code. And if everything works correctly, we already are able to interact with the GPT models. Let's have a look. Let's save this file. Go back to our browser, back to our app. Source file has changed, rerun. Let's just fix this. We don't want to call it your name anymore. That was just for testing. Let's just call it you. So, what should we do? Write a poem in the style of Shakespeare. Not very original, but let's see if this works. Send. And okay, so I have not actually provided my OpenAI key. That's right. I have my OpenAI key in my environment in a variable, but that means I need to delete or comment out this line of code for me. Let's see, rerun. A poem Shakespeare. No. Right. In that case, right, let me just take this quickly off the screen. I'm going to stop this and I'm going to put my OpenAI key into my environment variable. Thought I did that before, but maybe not. And start the app again. Okay. Yes. So here's my app again. I'm just going to keep it shorter this time. Hello. Okay, that looks good. Hello, how can I assist you today? Write a poem in the style of Shakespeare. All right, and here we go. Cool. Exciting stuff. Right. So where are we now? We have an application where we can send one-time requests to GPT 3.5 and we get back an answer. Now what we want is obviously we want this to be in a chat style format. So that means we don't want to have one time interaction with the GPT model. We want to have layered interactions where we can have a back and forth, just like in ChatGPT, obviously. Because right now, the GPT model will also not remember any previous conversations. So if I test that, I could write something like, hello, my name is Heiko. And then it will respond something like, hello, Heiko, what can I do for you? And then if I ask it, what is my name? It will not remember this because we haven't kept track of the conversation. That is something we need to do manually. Luckily, they show us again in the chat completion API documentation exactly how to do that. And it's not at all, it's not hard at all in order to achieve that. Basically, what we need to do is something that they have done here, where they first send the system message, then the user sends an initial request, and then we need to keep track of the of the response from the model. We need to add it basically to this list of messages before we then send our next query. And by just appending messages to this list, the OpenAI API will keep track of the conversation and it will remember previous interactions. The other thing we want to fix is obviously we not only want to have a text field with a send button, we also want to have a chat-like conversation, a representation of the conversation with like speech bubbles, where the user is here and then the model responds and the user has another text and the model responds. So that is also something we need to implement. All right, so let's get started. Let me switch over here. No, where's the text editor? There we go. Right. Any questions so far? I need to always also keep track of the chat. I have at least one monitor, too few monitors here to do this kind of thing. But let's start with keeping track of the messages. In order to keep track of the messages, the problem is we can't just have a regular list like messages equals something like this in a Streamlit application, because the whole code will be run every time we gonna submit. We're gonna type into something into the text field and press the submit button. So in order to solve for that, Streamlit has these so-called session variables, session state variables, and it means these session state variables will basically not be erased every time we interact with the UI. They keep track and do not lose the values. In order to initialize such a session state variable, we're gonna type if messages, so messages will be the name of our session state variable, is not in st.session_state. So basically, if this st session state does not have yet a field that is called messages, we're just going to create that. We're going to say st.session_state messages. And usually what you would do is you would initialize it with an empty value. But every time we start a conversation with the chatbot, we actually want to have the system message already in there. So what we can do instead is actually already add the system message in here. So just take the system message from here. And we cut this out here and put it in here. So now every time we start the conversation from new, we hit the refresh button in the browser. It will be this st.session_state messages variable will be initialized with the system message. And every time we send new texts to the API, it will not reset. Instead, we need to implement now the functionality that we want to add all the interactions to this list. So that's the next thing we need to do. First of all, we can replace though all this here with with our session state variable. So st session state messages is what we will be putting into the API as an input. And before we do that, now we can add the query that comes into this method. So that means st, just going to copy it again. So our messages list what we want to do, we want to append a new entry. The role for this one is going to be the user, and the content for this one will be the prompt, right? So whenever we call the generate response method, first of all, we want to append our prompt in here. So when we call it with our first query, it will have the system message in there as well as our first query. And then, actually, let me call this completion. And then the actual response from the model is this. And now that we have the response, we want to add that also to this variable in order to keep track of it. So that means we can copy this here, append. Actually, let me copy the whole thing, because all we need to change is the response that comes from the model will be quotes here. The role here will be from the assistant, and the content will be the response. And then we can just return the response. All right, we can test this right away. Even though we are not showing the whole interaction yet in a chat-like format, it should already be able to keep track of previous interactions. So let's see how that can look like. We're going back to our app. Oh, I did not press save. Once you press save, again, don't forget to rerun. And that's right, I'm missing a colon here in line 17. And because I copy pasted, also here in line 24. Rerun. I'm just gonna refresh now everything. Now I'm gonna tell it again, hello, my name is Heiko. And if I now ask it what is my name, I would expect it to remember, because it will keep track of all this interaction. Yeah. That is just a typo. Okay, let's refresh the whole page. I want to start from fresh. Hello, my Heiko. Send. What is my name? And there we go. Your name is Heiko, as you mentioned earlier. Is there anything else I can help you with? So now we have already implemented memory into our application. That's pretty great. All there's left to do really is to show the interactions above our text box, just like we have it in ChatGPT. Let's do that. I'm going to wait here for another minute or so and checking the live stream. Any questions? Again, just pop into the chat. I'm just going to wait for a minute for everyone to catch up. We are only at 35 lines of code. That's pretty cool. Right, let me see what else is there left to do. So, okay. Above our container, where we have currently the text box and the button, we want to place above that a response container, or conversation container would probably be a better word, but I'm going to stick with what I have here, the container. So now we're going to have the response container on top and then the container with the text box at the bottom. And we also need to import a third package, in particular a particular method from the Streamlit chat package, the message method from the Streamlit underscore chat package. That one will give us the option or the capability to display the messages as if they were in a conversation. So with I think with speech bubbles. So let's have a look at the blog post again. So basically like this. We want it to look like this. So yeah, with some agent emojis. And that's what we'll be doing with this messages method from Streamlit Chat. Right. So let's see. What we still need to do is basically fill now the messages in our response container. So we only want to show the responses if something has been generated. So if we had already have a conversation, and just to make my life easier, we are already capturing all the interactions. So that is our queries and the responses from GPT-3 in our messages variable. But I want to make my life easier and separate out our user queries and the responses from the model into two separate variables. It just makes it easier for me to loop over the messages in order to display them in the right order. In order to do that, I need two more session state variables. First one I'm going to call where is it? Generated, and the other one passed. So if generated, and these are the generated responses from the model, is not in st session state, then create st session state generated. And this one can be actually empty because at the beginning we will not have any generated messages from the model. And then I'm just gonna copy paste this whole thing and make the same for a variable called past. And past is our past queries. And now I can say, if we have already generated messages, so if st.session state generated, if there's something in there, we're going to fill the response container. Response container. And basically, we're going to be looping over whatever is in this generated, in this list of generated messages, st.session session state generated, colon. And we're going to say, put out the message, first the message of the user. So st.session state, and these are in the past, in the variable that is called past, number I. And then we say, we can specify that this one is coming from the user by saying isUser equals true. And we need to give it a key, an identifier, and we're just going to take string of I plus plus user. And then I'm just going to copy this line. So first we're going to show from the past messages, we're going to show our query, and then we show the response from the model. The response is in the generated variable. Is user true? We're not going to put that here. By default, this is false, so it knows that this message is from the bot, and we're just going to give that one the key I. That's it. And I think that should be it. No, not quite, because just like we added the user queries and the responses from the model to our messages app, because I want to capture both of them in separate variables. Additionally, we need to add them there as well. So that means we can just, whenever we generate a response, we can also add the user query to the past variable. So like this. And we're just going to append the exact same thing, although this is not going to be a dictionary like it was here. It's just going to be the prompt. It's just a regular list of strings. And once we have the response, we're gonna append it to here as well, generated the response. All right, that should be it. 50 lines of code. And let's see if this is already everything we need. I'm gonna save this file, go back to our application, rerun. All right, let's see. This is again a typo, I think. It should be st dot session state. Let's see. Yeah, typo here and typo here. Save. Back to the app. Rerun. Okay, let's see. Quite curious now. Hello, how are you? Send. Okay, something is not right here. Oh, okay, yes. No. With response container. Response container. One second. I think, does this need to go to the end? Not sure. Let's see. Also, yeah, we don't want to write the output here anymore. We just want to generate the output. Output equals. Actually, da, da, da. Yep. Let's see. We run. Oh, okay. That looks good. Now we can again flush. It has kept the messages already in these session state variables that we have defined here at the top. We can flush those by just reloading the whole page. And now we should have a completely functional chatbot UI. Let's see. Hello, my name is Heiko. All right, and then it comes back with hello Heiko, how may I assist you today? What is my name? All right, the memory function still works, so I think we are good to go. Who won the World Cup in 1990? And who shot the deciding goal? I think who scored? Yeah, all right. So that's it really. We do have now our own chatbot UI, and there's a little bit more, how do you call that, bells and whistles that you can include into this chatbot UI. But I think it's not bad for 53, 52 lines of code. We basically have now on our local machine a web interface that has the exact same power capabilities as ChatGPT if you were to use ChatGPT with GPT 3.5. If you already have access, if you have signed up to OpenAI's platform earlier and you already have access to the GPT-4 API, you can even use GPT-4 already here in your chatbot UI. You might have seen in the blog post, I have here on the left-hand side a sidebar. Let me zoom in here, where I actually let the user choose the model, so I can just choose between GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. I also have some additional information after every conversation. I'm just displaying the number of tokens and then calculate the costs. Again, the costs are just taken from this pricing page from OpenAI. You can see the GPT-4 model is a lot more expensive than GPT 3.5, also slower, but obviously also more powerful. It is actually, you can't really say how much more expensive it is because with GPT-4, they actually distinguish between the tokens in the prompt and the tokens in completion. But let's just, for the argument's sake, take an upper bound and say everything is priced at 6 cents per 1,000 tokens. That means GPT-4 is 30 times more expensive than GPT 3.5. The blog post that I have here also links to the GitHub repo where the whole code is actually I had it already open here. So the whole code from what we did today and a little bit more you can find in here. So you will see it's very similar to what we have coded today. It's a little bit longer because I have some extra stuff in there. And there's tons of ways you could even improve the whole user interface. I listed some of those at the end of my blog post. You could implement token streaming, for example. That is, you don't wait for the whole response to be generated, but instead, as the model comes back with some responses, just like ChatGPT again does, you just show the words as they are being generated. Saving and displaying previous conversations would be a nice add-on. Showing usage and costs on a daily basis. Implementing more control parameters. The control parameters you will actually find in the API reference for the create chat completion. So right now we only use the model and the messages. You can also choose temperature, which makes the output more random if you put a higher value. And then in alternative to that, you can also use other parameters like top P, stream is here, stop, max tokens, and so on. There's a lot you can play around with, and you can basically customize this UI, this application as much as you like. But that's really all I wanted to show today. Let me see if there's any more questions. Oh, okay. So someone's asking, could you point out what the issue was when we had a slight hiccup just a minute ago, the very last fix? The very last fix I remembered was just a typo. I had here st underscore session underscore state, where I actually needed st dot session underscore state. That's the last fix I remember. Hopefully that's the one you were referring to. Again, I know there's a lag here, so just waiting. Smalls, if you could indicate in the chat whether that is the one uh, that worked for you. There's another, but I can simply roll back the footage. This is very cool, but what would this be most useful for? Actually, I use this app that I have written instead of ChatGPT. So that's actually how I now use GPT models. Because sometimes I want to use GPT-4 especially when I want to analyze code or when I want the model to write code for me. I usually fall back to GPT-4. But in order for me to use GPT-4 in ChatGPT, I need to upgrade to their offering called ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month, which I think is a fair price, but I don't use GPT-4 enough that it justifies the price for me. So I then rather go with every now and then using GPT-4 with their pricing that they have indicated here, which still will be a lot cheaper than than me paying $20 a month. So this app really has completely replaced the ChatGPT app for me. Um, Also, there are different terms of usage, and especially when it comes to data privacy. So I pointed this out in my blog post as well. ChatGPT by default collects the data and uses it to improve the service. It is possible to opt out, but you have to do some extra steps to do that. And that's why countries like Italy have now banned actually ChatGPT. It was not about the AI model itself. It was about the product, the web UI of like the ChatGPT product. Um, on the other hand, when you use the APIs directly, by default, the data is not collected unless we specifically opt in. You can actually see that in OpenAI's API usage document. So if I click on that, This is the API data usage policies. So that's exactly what we just did. We used the API directly, and here it says already on the first sentence, will not use data submitted by customers to train or improve our models unless you explicitly decide to share. So it just makes me feel a little bit better, especially if you've seen there was recently was it Samsung ChatGPT. Yeah, so apparently, Samsung's meeting notes and new source code are now in the wild after being leaked in ChatGPT. Again, that is because they have used ChatGPT, the product, and not the API itself. So, yeah. And lastly, it was just a lot of fun for me to program this. And I will keep, working on my GitHub demo in order to, put in maybe some more features into my UI. Cool. Right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I will close the stream for today. I hope this was useful. Um, I I think it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit unnerving to code live in front of an audience, but I think it was actually a lot of fun. I hope you guys took away, you were able to follow my thought process and were able to follow along. And so I hope I will be able to do this again at some point. Yeah, and with that, I will end the stream now. Have a good evening and a good rest of your Easter. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.